Hello everyone, my name is Zenitsu and I'm back with another Buddyfight deck profile video. So today is going to be a budget Legend World deck, and what I mean by budget is a single copy of any given card on this list should not cost you more than $5 as of the recording of this video. So the whole idea is to be centered around the trial deck versions of the three Drag Gods, Magma Horus, Freeza Horus, and Voltic Raan. And even though these are the more powered down versions of the booster pack versions, they still are very powerful in their own right, and they can still have a lot of playability. As such, I'm going to be running 3 of each buddy because you really need to see the buddies in order for the deck to kind of function as a whole. Making sure that you see them is very, very important, and I just felt like having 3 of each, because you need deck space for other cards, is a solid number. They have a buddy call chain ability called triple buddy call and double buddy call. When you buddy call Voltic Raan, you get to buddy call Freeza Horus for free, and when you buddy call Freeza Horus, you get a buddy call Magma Horus for free. And they all have an initial call cost of 2 otherwise. What Ra's static ability is if this card is in your center, all size 1 Dragods on your field cannot be destroyed or returned to hand by your opponent's card effects, and they get an additional plus 10,000 power and plus 10,000 defense. So that already is very, very powerful, locking out the ability to be destroyed or bounced, so it limits the options that your opponent has to react with you. And then obviously he calls Freeza Horus for free. So when Freeza Horus is called, he could call Magma for free, but his static ability is at the start of your attack phase, if you have legendary flame deity Magma Horus on your field, all monsters on your field get penetrate and double attack. So that way they could ensure the damage is getting through and attack multiple times. When Magma Horus is called by the effect of Freeza Horus, you get to destroy all monsters on your opponent's field and deal damage to your opponent equal to the number of cards destroyed. That's just a pretty good ability considering it's a board wipe. Unfortunately, it's only on monsters and not the entire field, but if they don't have protection against destruction on their monsters, then it's still a very, very strong ability. Like I said, I'm running 3 of each of them for consistency. Next, I'm running 3 Starry Knight Enchanter. He has an act ability, Star Prayer. You get to drop a Legend Dragon card from your hand, look at the top 5 cards of your deck, put up to 1 Dragod and up to 1 Legend Dragon among them into your hand, and then put the rest on the bottom in any order. And then you can only use the ability once per turn. He's just there mainly to fish and dig for the cards that you want to see. Next, I'm running 4 copies of Devoted Mummy Maker. He's just discard fodder. When he's dropped from your hand, you put the top 2 cards of your deck into the gauge, and then he also has an Enter ability. When this card enters the field, if you have another Legend Dragon on your field, you gain 1 life and draw a card. He has a decent amount of utility use in either drawing you a card when he's called or when he's dropped from your hand, which is 99.9% of what you're going to do. You get to gain 2 gauge. Next, I'm running 4 copies of Valkyrie of the All-Knowing Alduin. So again, more discard fodder. When this card is discarded from your hand, put the top card of your deck into your gauge and draw a card. Next, I'm running 2 copies of Magma Horus SD and Freeza Horus SD. Again, just more discard fodder. When this card is discarded from your hand, you may put a size 1 Dragod from your drop zone into your hand, so in case any of them are in the drop zone from either paying gauge or milled or destroyed, what be it, this is a good way to recur your Dragods. And then if you call this card, because it is also a Dragod, when this card attacks, if you buddy called during this fight, then this card gets triple attack and you can only activate this once per turn. Again, it's just a fairly good utility card. Either you could call it or you could use its discard effect. It's a Dragod and it's a Legend Dragon, so it's just a very solid card. Next, I'm running 3 copies of Ancient Crest Wall. This is their set spell, and its passive effect is all legend dragons on your field can't have their effects nullified by your opponent's card's effects. I'm running 3 of it in case this card gets destroyed. You need to have extra copies. And then it has an act ability where you can drop a legend dragon from your hand, pay 1 gauge. If you do, draw 2 cards and you can only use it once per turn. And then you can only have 1 of this set spell on your field at a time. It's just there for a good draw engine. It's good for discarding cards, and it's good because it helps your legend dragons stick and not have their abilities be nullified. Next, I'm running 3 copies of Inevitable Victory. You may only cast this if you have 2 or more legend dragons on your field and you have a king item equipped. You get to put the top 2 cards of your deck into your gauge, gain 2 life, and draw 2 cards. And then you can only use it once per turn. It's just there because it's one of the better, cheaper draw engine options that is available to the deck. Same thing with Draenir Ironbark. So you can only cast this card if you have 2 or more legend dragons on your field. Its cast cost is pay 1 gauge, and then you gain a life and draw 2 cards, and then you can only cast it once per turn. Just, again, another good draw engine card that is very, very cheap and affordable. Next, I'm running 3 copies of King's Privilege. Again, another engine card, but it has a little bit different utility where you just pay 1 gauge, and then if a fire card is on your field, you deal 2 damage to the opponent. If a water card is on your field, you gain 2 life, and if a thunder card is on your field, you draw 2 cards. So ideally, you're going to be casting this when you have all 3 out, because Magma is a fire, Freeza is a water, and Rot is a thunder card. When all 3 are out, you get all 3 abilities, and it's just, again, another very cheap and halfway decent draw option. Next, I'm running 2 copies of Yingelgard. Again, more draw. Its cast cost is drop a hand card, which triggers all of our discard synergy, and then you just draw 2 cards, and then you can only use it once per turn. Next, I'm running 2 copies of the Arcane Crown. You get to choose one of the following 2, and you can only cast it once per turn. You could either put up to 1 king item from your deck and add it to your hand. You get to put 2 Legend Dragon monsters with different names from your drop zone into your hand, and if you do, you drop a hand card. So both of the effects are very, very good. Searching for a king item is very, very important because we are running a decent amount of different king items, and ensuring that you can kind of cycle between them and utilize all of their abilities is very, very powerful. And then again, if you have your Dragods in the drop and you need to get them back, this is a good way at getting them back. Next, I'm running 2 copies of The King's Guidance. So its cast cost is pay 2 gauge, and then counter, return up to 2 size 1 legend dragons from your field to your hand, then call 2 size 1 legend dragons from your hand without paying their call cost. This is both a good offensive and defensive card because it not only does it allow you to call 2 legend dragons at counter speed, but it allows you to dodge removal and add extra attacks. Next, I'm running 2 copies of Breathing Guard. Its cast cost is pay 2 gauge, and then counter, either nullify the spell your opponent is casting or destroy a spell on your opponent's field. The rest of the effect doesn't really matter. All you're going to be using it for is either to destroy a set spell already on the field or to nullify an incoming spell. Next, I'm running 2 copies of Retainer Shield. So this is the primary defensive card in the deck. So what it does is you can only cast this during an attack on your opponent's turn. You pay 1 life and then nullify the attack. If there is a Dragod on your left and right, you may drop a hand card. If you do, return this card back to your hand. The whole idea and why we're running so much discard fodder is mostly for this card and a couple of other card effects, because this is a recurable defense spell. Next, I'm running 1 copy of Krimaz Sith Nokima. So you can only cast this if there are 3 different Dragods and Legend Dragons on your field. So when you have all 3 of them out, you get to counter, put a Legend Dragon from your drop zone into your hand, then return all cards from your drop zone to the deck, and you can only cast this card once per fight. So the whole idea is this just resets your graveyard because we have so much card draw and we could go through a lot of different cards. This just allows us to refill our deck so that way we don't ever really fear decking out. Next, I'm running 1 copy of Scepter of Maiden. So its equip cost is paying 1 life. Legend Dragon monsters on your left and right get plus 5,000 power. And then it has an act ability. Choose a Legend Dragon monster in your drop zone. You may rest this card. If you do, put the chosen card into your hand. It's just really there to help recycle our Legend Dragon monsters that we discarded, or if we really need to see a Dragot that we discarded or is in the drop, it helps us get it back. Next, I'm running 1 copy of Seat of the Absolute, Heradic Throne. If a Dragot on your field would leave the field, you basically can destroy this card and that card stays. And then it has an act ability, rest this card. If you do, look at the top 5 cards, put up to 1 Legend Dragon monster among them into your hand and the rest on the bottom. So again, it's there for additional protection, on top of which it's there to help fish out the Dragods and Legend Dragon cards that we want to see. And then I'm running 1 copy of Future Force DGX. It has a release condition in which if you have 3 or more different Legend Dragons and Dragon monsters on the field, you could play this card. And then this card on the field cannot be destroyed or leave the field, and its abilities cannot be nullified by your opponent's card effects, which is very powerful because once this card sticks, there's not really much the opponent can do to remove it. And then this card can also attack even if there's a Legend Dragon in your center, so it could attack through your center, which is very good, considering we will always have a full board, or ideally a full board. And then it has a counteract ability. During this turn, you may drop a card from your hand. If you do, stand all Legend Dragon monsters in your buddy zone and on your field, and then you can only use this once per turn. And then this item also has triple attack. Not only is it standing up the Legend Dragons in your buddy zone, which means you could get their buddy gifts again, which means you could get their buddy call abilities again, but it also stands them up on the field for additional aggression and pressure, on top of which this card naturally has triple attack. It's just a very, very strong card, and ideally you're going to want to try to use both of these effects before you cast Future Force. So that way, when Future Force sticks, it just stays on the board. And then lastly, I'm running 2 copies of Forbidden Light of Double Deity. So you can only cast this card if you have a Dragon and a King on your field. Then its cast cost is pay 2 gauge. And then you deal 2 damage to your opponent for each Dragon on your field, and then end the final phase. It's just a very, very powerful impact in this deck, and it could lead to an FTK. So I do have a couple of other cards you could run in the deck. You could run Junior Long Spear Warrior Liam. He's just there for another discard fodder card, and what he does is at the start of your final phase, that this card was dropped from your hand. If a Legend Dragon is on your field, you get to put him back from your drop zone to your hand. And then if you do, you get to put the top card of your deck into your gauge and gain 1 life. Again, just more discard fodder. His ability is a little bit weird in which you don't gain any initial benefits from him being discarded, but the fact that he is recurable discard fodder is very good to note. You could also run Revenge. By paying 1 gauge, you get to countercall a size 2 or less Dragon from your drop zone without paying its call cost. It's acting similar to the King's Guidance, except it's from the drop and not from your hand, and it's not bouncing back, but it's a very similar effect, and it's still a very powerful effect. Then you could run the Majestic Audience. This is just another really solid defense spell option that the deck has access to. You can only cast this if you have a Legend Dragon on your field. Its cast cost is pay 1 gauge, then counter, rest a card on your opponent's field, and that card cannot stand for the turn. Resting is very, very powerful in the game currently. Next, you could run Sector Collapse. For this turn, the crit of all of your Legend Dragons can't be reduced by your opponent's card effects, and when a size 1 Legend Dragon on your field attacks, you could destroy 1 card on your opponent's field. If you do, deal 1 damage to your opponent. You could also run Cardinal Dashfur, so you can only cast this card if both a Dragon and Legend Dragon is on your field, and then counter, choose one of the following 2. Either choose a Dragon on your field, and for this turn your opponent cannot counter during the battle in which it's attacking alone. So it ensures that it makes it harder for the opponent to defend, considering they can't use counter cards. Or choose a Dragout on your field, give it plus 10,000 defense and counterattack, which isn't necessarily the worst option, but shutting the opponent's ability to counter off is a little bit more stronger, in my opinion. Next, you could run Spirit of Thunderclap. Put this card in the soul of a Legend Dragon monster on your field. If this is in the soul of a Legend Dragon monster, it gets Soul Guard, and then when a Legend Dragon with this card in its soul attacks, deal 1 damage to the opponent. This is just a very good card because it's giving your Legend Dragons Soul Guard, so it makes it harder for them to be removed. On top of which, when the Legend Dragon attacks, it's going to deal 1 damage to the opponent, which is very, very good. Next, you could run Pyramidal Peak. You can only cast this card if you have a Dragon on your field, and then you get to choose one of the following 2. You could either destroy a size 2 or less monster on your opponent's field, or you could destroy a spell or item on your opponent's field. So again, just more set spell and item removal is probably the primary use. But if you really need to destroy a size 2 or less monster, if it doesn't have protection, that option is available to you as well. And then you could run the Great Spell. You cast this card at the end of the first battle on your opponent's turn. You pay 2 gauge, pay 2 life, and then end their attack phase. So this is just another very powerful defense spell that the deck has available to it. That's mostly it for the budget version of Legend Dragons as of the Climax booster. I feel like even in a budget form, the deck is still very, very powerful and still has lots and lots of different options to it. As always, I'll have the deck list in the description below, and I hope you enjoyed this video. And feel free to comment on any cards you would have added to the deck or any questions you have about the deck. And as always, don't forget to like and subscribe for more Buddyfight content, and I will see you in the next video.